The straps of my pack creaked as I cinched them tighter and stepped onto the Whitewater Ridge Trail. Cold mountain air swept across my face, the kind that stings just enough to wake your lungs and make the rest of the world feel like background noise. Gravel crunched under my boots in the familiar rhythm of a route I'd walked dozens of times, and for the first half mile it felt like any other perfect day in the Alberta backcountry. Clear sky, cool air, just the right bite of autumn clinging to the season. The trailhead had been nearly empty that morning. A couple of scattered cars sat in the gravel lot, their drivers probably hours ahead on different routes. I always preferred it that way. Late start, empty trail, no forced small talk with strangers hiking too fast or too slow. My pack carried the standard kit: water, first aid pouch, emergency supplies, and the lopsided sandwich I'd slapped together before leaving my apartment in Canmore. Nothing complicated, just fuel for a simple out-and-back hike. I'd done my final gear check the same way I'd done for years. GPS clipped to my belt, phone fully charged, compass as a redundantly redundant backup. Not because I needed them. I knew this trail well enough to walk it blindfolded, but because routine keeps you alive in the mountains. The first stretch wound through a thicket of evergreen, the air thick with pine resin and the faint dampness of last night's frost. Aspen trunks rose pale and bare between the conifers, stark white lines where golden leaves had hung only a few weeks earlier. I fell into my usual hiking pace, steady and unhurried, letting the climb loosen my body and quiet my mind. Out here there were no emails, no deadlines, just the soft hiss of my breath and the rustle of my jacket. About an hour in, a family passed me on their way down, parents with two tired but smiling kids. A silent nod exchanged, the unwritten hiker's code. I see you. You're okay. Carry on. I pushed further up the ridge, heart rate climbing with the grade, thighs warming into that clean, productive burn. Pine needles softened my steps, releasing their sharp scent each time my boots compressed them. The forest felt honest, predictable, comforting. 2 hours in, the low roar of meltwater reached me before the stream itself came into view. The Whitewater Creek was exactly as I remembered it, wide, fast, glass cold. A log bridge crossed the deepest channel, but tradition pulled me to the boulder fields where I always hopped across on rocks slick with centuries of current. I settled onto a wide stone, shrugged off my pack, and went through the motions of topping off my water. That's when the first wrong thing happened. My GPS flickered, spat out a row of broken characters, and died. Not low battery, not frozen screen, just gone. I tried every trick I knew. Nothing. Annoying, but not panic-worthy. I pulled out my phone, no bars, expected, but no emergency SOS indicator, no time display, no satellite lock, no system clock, no location. Apps requiring network or satellite all returned the same error, unavailable. It looked less like a dropped signal and more like the world had quietly unplugged itself. I rebooted the phone. Same results. Still not dangerous. I'd hiked this trail long before smartphones existed. Navigation wasn't the issue. The issue was that an entire suite of unrelated electronics had failed at the exact same time on a clear day in open terrain. I stowed the gear and crossed the stream stone to stone, letting the icy splash wake me up. Beyond the water, the trail steepened into older forest, bigger trees, thicker undergrowth, quieter air. It normally felt like stepping deeper into the mountain's lungs. But today something was off. It wasn't sudden. It crept in. I walked 50 yards before noticing the shift. The forest wasn't quiet. It was silent. No birds, no insects, no wind, not even the faint creak of trees adjusting in the cold. A vacuum of sound so complete it felt engineered. I stopped walking. Even my breath sounded intrusive. Silence like that only happens in two circumstances: when a predator is near or when something is very, very wrong. The air felt stagnant, cold against the back of my neck. I scanned the trees for movement, bears, cats, anything, nothing. No tracks, no rustling, nothing alive. I told myself to keep walking, and I did. But the silence followed me, a bubble that moved with me, a dome carved out of the world's normal noise. Then came the feeling, the slow, undeniable tightening between the shoulder blades. The one every experienced hiker knows from animal encounters. Being watched. At first, it was vague awareness, then directional. Behind me, left side, tracking. I stopped again and turned fully. The forest looked exactly as it should, nothing out of place. But the feeling didn't fade. It sharpened. I kept moving. I didn't run. Running in the woods activates the wrong instincts, in predators and in you. I focused on locating the familiar turnoff to Cascade Falls, marked by a large Douglas fir with a carved sign bolted to its trunk. I rounded the bend, expecting the sign's weathered wood to greet me like it had for years. The tree was there. The sign was not fallen, not vandalized, just never there at all. I circled the trunk. No bolt holes, no discoloration, smooth bark. I tried to rationalize miscounted bends, mistaken tree, but everything past that point drifted further from the map in my head. The slope steepened where it should have relaxed. The ridgeline angled away where it should have paralleled the trail. Trees shifted species, density, spacing. Subtle at first, then undeniable. My boots followed my own tracks back the way I came, until they didn't. The path behind me dropped at a different angle through different forest. Aspen where pine should be. Undergrowth where there should have been clean floor. Compass still pointed north, but the land did not respect north anymore. That's when logic finally admitted defeat. The terrain had changed. Not metaphorically, not perceptually, changed. I forced calm into my breathing. Water always leads somewhere, downstream, toward drainages, toward roads. I found a creek, slipped down the slope, and followed it, boots squelching through mud, poles clicking against stone, but the water betrayed me too. After half a mile, the creek split into 3 separate channels, equal in volume, equal in age, each wearing smooth banks shaped by decades of flow. Creeks don't do that. Nature doesn't do that. Something else does. I picked the center channel. As I followed it, the presence behind me returned. Left side, always left side, moving when I moved, stopping when I did. Perfect distance. Perfect mimicry. Puppet string patience. The forest grew deliberate, too symmetrical, too maintained, as if grown or arranged according to plans I had no way to understand. Then the silence thickened again. The feeling sharpened again. And in the center of that stillness, I stepped into a circular clearing and saw my reflection ripple in the stream, distorted. And behind it, for the briefest moment, a dark, motionless shape between the pines. I spun. Nothing. But the forest wasn't pretending anymore. Whatever followed me wanted me to know it was there. And deeper in the trees, waiting, watching, patient, I felt it settle into place as if ready for whatever came next. I stood in the clearing longer than I should have, waiting for my heartbeat to slow, waiting for the forest to blink or breathe or do anything that would anchor me back to reality. Nothing moved, nothing shifted. My reflection in the creek smoothed itself out, losing the warped ripple that had twisted my face into something unfamiliar. I forced myself to swallow. The air tasted metallic now, like cold iron left out in the rain. The shape I'd seen behind me couldn't have been real. It couldn't have been. Shadows bend across running water all the time. Trees line up strangely. Eyes catch phantoms when the adrenaline hits. I fed myself every logical excuse available, even though each one felt like trying to tape a dam shut. I needed to get out of the clearing. The creek's central channel flowed steadily to the south, at least according to the compass, which still behaved as if nothing else was wrong. I chose to trust it, if only to give myself something to obey. I walked, letting the forest close in behind me again, branches scraping lightly against the fabric of my sleeves. For the next several minutes, the woods remained silent, suffocating. Even my footsteps felt muffled. I caught myself checking over my shoulder too often, straining to identify movement in my peripheral vision. Leaves twitched occasionally, but the motion never fit the wind. It felt more like delayed gestures, like the forest reacting after I passed, but never while I was present. 10 minutes later, the terrain shifted again. Subtle at first, a rise where I expected a dip, a set of boulders where I'd never seen any on this trail before. Then more obvious, the ground changed from mossy to dry, cracked soil that looked years out of step with the climate. The forest around me darkened, canopy thickening unnaturally fast. That feeling, that thing tracking me pressed in again. Always on the left, always matching my pace, always just out of sight. I gripped my trekking pole tighter, digging it into the soft soil like it might serve as some kind of weapon if things went sideways. The rational part of me argued it was just an animal. A cougar shadowing me out of curiosity, a black bear out of sight. But that's not how predators move. They don't mirror your strides. They don't freeze when you freeze like some coiled thought trying to match your timing. And predators don't rearrange the landscape. I kept the creek in view as long as I could until the banks widened and the water spread into a shallow marsh that swallowed the trail entirely. Boot prints, my own, disappeared beneath reeds that shouldn't have existed at this elevation. I hesitated at the edge, scanning for a dry path. That's when I heard it. A sound. A real sound. Not wind. Not water. A single soft click from behind me, like two small rocks tapping together. Deliberate. Slow. I froze so completely that even my breathing paused. Nothing followed. No second click. No rustle. Just that one message tapped into the world as if to remind me, you are not walking alone. I turned gradually, inch by inch, forcing myself to stay calm. The forest behind me looked normal, dim, still, empty, but a pine tree about 20 yards back had changed. When I'd walked through the clearing earlier, I'd passed that same kind of pine, thick trunk, heavy branches drooping under their own weight. Now the one behind me had something else, scratches. Long, clean, vertical lines cut into the bark from a height no animal around here could reach. Too high for a cougar, too even for a bear, too fresh to be old trail markings. Sap still bled from the grooves, thick and amber, glistening like wet honey. And the scratches weren't random, they formed a pattern. 4 tall lines, parallel, then a space, then 4 more. A mirrored set, a shape, a symbol, a boundary marker, the kind you draw to keep something in or out. My stomach flipped, a cold drop sinking through me. I didn't remember walking past that tree. I didn't remember seeing that symbol anywhere on the trail. Someone or something had marked it while I was already inside this part of the forest. I backed away from it, one step at a time, keeping my eyes locked on the trunk. My boot hit the water line and the cold seeped through the laces, that snapping me back into motion. I crossed the marsh where it narrowed, boots plunging into muck, reeds brushing my legs. Each step made the forest behind me feel tighter, closer, like it leaned toward me, like it anticipated my next move. On the far side, I climbed onto higher ground and forced myself deeper into the only direction that continued to slope downward. Down meant valleys. Valleys meant rivers. Rivers meant roads. That logic felt solid enough to cling to, even if everything else had turned fluid around me. But the forest grew stranger. What should have been a typical descent began turning symmetrical. Trees lined themselves in faint arcs, roots mapped into faint circular ridges. I started seeing repetition, same fallen log appearing twice, same forked branch shape at impossible intervals, a geometric rhythm hidden under natural camouflage. The feeling of being watched shifted too, no longer behind me, now to the right. A reposition, a flank. Whatever shadowed me had moved, not fast, not loud, not sloppy, but decisively. That realization hit harder than the scratches on the tree. A predator flanks, a hunter flanks, a person does too, but people announce themselves. They call out, they never synchronize their footsteps with yours. A new sound broke the silence. 3 soft taps, evenly spaced, wood on wood, then nothing. But the message landed. It wasn't random, it wasn't environmental. It was communication, and it was close. My legs wanted to run. Instinct screamed to bolt downhill, consequences be damned. But rational survival told me not to. Running in terrain you don't understand is a quick way to fall, break something, and become prey. So I forced myself to walk at a normal pace, every nerve burning as I scanned between the trees. I didn't see it. Not fully, but I caught a single detail. So quick, I thought I imagined it. Something, someone, stepping back behind a pine trunk. Not an animal, a silhouette. Tall, human-shaped, frozen in the exact posture of someone who didn't want to be seen. My chest hollowed out. I walked faster. The forest grew quieter again, and when the silence sealed itself around me for a third time, I knew, without doubt, that whatever followed me wasn't trying to chase me. It was trying to guide me, somewhere deeper, somewhere it knew the land would shift again. Somewhere it had prepared. I don't know how long I walked after that, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 30. The forest had a way of warping time now, stretching moments until my sense of distance unraveled. Every step felt like it carried me farther from the world I understood and deeper into something that had been waiting much longer than I'd been alive. The ground began sloping in a way I couldn't explain. Downhill, yes, but not toward any valley I recognized. The grade steepened too quickly, like a funnel. My trekking pole sank deeper into soft soil until I could smell the wet earth rising up around me. Every once in a while, a pine needle brushed my neck, too high to fall naturally, too intentional, like something overhead moved quietly through the branches. The presence on my right kept pace with me, silent but absolute. When I slowed, it slowed. When I sped up, it matched me. Never closer, never further, as if it understood personal space in a way I found far more unnerving than if it had closed in for the kill. I tried talking once, just to break the silence. Hello? Is someone there? The words died in my throat. They didn't echo. The air swallowed them. It felt like speaking underwater. I didn't try again. The forest floor soon opened into a narrow ravine, its sides steep and threaded with old roots like skeletal fingers gripping the earth. A thin trail, not one I'd ever seen, ran along the ravine's base, weaving through boulders and moss-covered stones. It was too clean, too precise to be an animal path. Something used it, frequently. I followed it because I had no other option. As I moved, the trees above leaned inward, branches crossing overhead like a vaulted ceiling. Shadows thickened, light dimmed. A cold draft slid down the ravine even though the air outside had been still. The temperature dropped fast enough to mist my breath, and for the first time since the silence began, I heard something alive. Not the presence, not the forest rearranging itself. Running water. A low, steady murmur. A river. Or a stream big enough to matter. Relief punched through my chest. Rivers lead places. Rivers are real. Rivers don't change direction on a whim. I picked up my pace, boots crunching gravel, mind racing ahead to the possibility of following the flow out of whatever corridor I'd been funneled into. But before I reached the source of the sound, the sky above the ravine flickered. Not lightning, not sunlight through a cloud gap, something closer to movement. A shadow passed overhead, massive, like a bird but silent, gliding. I craned my neck, searching for wings, for form, for anything that would make sense. Nothing. The trees swayed lightly, but only in the wake of where that thing had passed. That's when the ravine widened suddenly, spilling me out into a basin that absolutely did not belong anywhere on the Whitewater Ridge Trail. I stopped dead. The ground leveled into a wide, circular depression about 30 yards across. The soil here was different, fine, dark, almost volcanic. In the center lay a pool of water, perfectly still, perfectly round, reflecting the canopy above like a polished mirror. No creek fed it, no stream exited it. The water didn't move at all. Yet the sound of running water filled the air. I stepped closer, boots sinking slightly into the strange soil. The presence on my right seemed to halt at the basin's edge. I felt it. Not in sound, not in sight, but in the way the air shifted temperature around my ribs, as if something cold took one last step and then stopped. I crouched at the edge of the pool. The water was so clear I could see straight to the bottom, stones smooth as river pebbles, arranged in a subtle geometric pattern, too orderly, too intentional. I dipped my finger into the pool. The surface didn't ripple, not even a tremor. My skin broke the water, but the image reflected back at me didn't distort. My reflection stared upward, eyes wide, unblinking, even as my actual hand sank elbow deep into water so cold it numbed my bones. That's when the reflection blinked. I yanked my arm back so fast I fell backward onto my hands. The water remained untouched, perfectly still, my reflection staring up at me again, but now the eyes weren't mine. They were darker, older, watching. I scrambled to my feet as the presence shifted, moving now. Slow. Intentional. It stepped into the basin behind me. I didn't see its shape, but I felt pressure in the air, like a low hum against my spine. The soil trembled under my boots. Then something changed in the pool. The stones at the bottom rotated, quiet, seamless, rearranging themselves into a new pattern, a symbol, a mirror of the one carved into the pine tree. 4 lines, a space, 4 lines, the boundary marker. Something was opening, or closing, or calling. I backed away from the pool, heart hammering, breath shaking out of me in shallow bursts. The presence behind me stopped, waiting, not chasing, not attacking, waiting. As if the pool expected me to come closer, as if the thing in the reflection expected me to step in. A wind stirred through the basin, finally, movement, and with it came a low resonance, a vibration I felt more than heard. My pack straps buzzed against my shoulders. The hairs on my arms rose. The pool darkened, not like water deepening, more like something moving beneath it. Then, from the center, a cluster of bubbles rose to the surface, not popping outward, but collapsing inward like they were being pulled down instead of up. The forest fell silent again. The presence leaned closer, and the reflection in the water smiled. I staggered backward until my heel caught on a root and nearly sent me tumbling. The smile in the water didn't fade. It didn't flicker. It didn't belong to me or any version of me I wanted to imagine. It was wider, too wide, stretching in a shape human faces weren't built to make. I tore my gaze away and forced myself to look anywhere else. The basin, the trees, the shadows, anything but that impossible reflection pulling at my attention like a hook under the skin. But the forest wasn't giving me answers. Every tree leaned inward, branches angled toward the pool as though the entire basin had a gravitational pull. The air tightened. Even my breath felt slowed, dragged, like the atmosphere was thickening. The presence behind me shifted one step closer. Not rushing, not lunging, just closing the distance. I could feel it at my back, taller than me, far taller, radiating a cold that settled against my spine like a frigid hand. My instincts screamed at me to turn, to look, to confirm what hunted me. But something deeper warned me not to, that if I saw it fully, really saw it, something in me would crack open and the forest would swallow the pieces. So I kept my eyes forward, locked on the pool. The surface began to move, not like wind, not like ripples, more like breath. The water was inhaling. The smooth mirror bulged upward and sank inward with slow, rhythmic pulls like a lung beneath a thin layer of glass. Each inhale dragged at the air in my chest, sinking with my breathing until my lungs matched it involuntarily. I clutched my ribs and forced myself to step back, breaking the pattern. The forest exhaled sharply, branches quivering. The water stilled again, and my reflection, leaned forward as if rising to meet me. I stumbled another step back. My boot hit something soft. Not soil, not moss. Fabric. I looked down. A backpack, not mine. A faded red hiking pack lay half buried in the black soil, one strap torn, the other frayed as if something had tugged on it for hours. Dirt filled the zippers. The fabric looked sun-bleached, weather-worn. Someone else had stood here. Someone else had seen the pool. Someone else had left this behind. I crouched slowly, never turning my back fully to the presence behind me. My fingers brushed the dirt away from the main pocket zipper. It took effort. The fabric resisted, stiff with age. When I finally got it open, the smell of damp rot puffed upward. Inside were scraps of gear, a crushed water bottle, a scrap of tarp, a headlamp with a cracked lens, and a notebook. Water damaged, warped, the ink bleeding into the pages. I flipped through carefully until I reached a page where the writing was, miraculously, still legible. It held only 3 words written in frantic black marker. Don't look back. My throat tightened. The presence behind me seemed to lean even closer, the cold deepening until my teeth ached. I could feel the space where its head would be hovering inches from mine, like it was waiting for me to break the rule written by someone who clearly hadn't made it out. I shut the notebook with shaking fingers. The water inhaled again, not subtle now. The surface caved inward as if something enormous inside the pool were drawing breath. A deep, wet gurgle vibrated through the basin. I backed away further, inch by inch, until I neared the ravine tunnel I'd entered from. The forest around the basin seemed to resist my retreat, branches shifting slightly, the path narrowing as if the trees were leaning in to keep me from leaving. The presence behind me followed again, a half step, a whispered shift of weight, a cold draft sliding along the side of my neck. I felt its height, its mass, its attention. But still, it didn't touch me. It wanted me here. Watching the pool, responding to it. The water convulsed. A single stone from the bottom snapped upward with incredible force, hitting the surface, and instead of splashing, it stuck. Pressed flat against the top of the water like the liquid had become solid. Then another stone rose, and another, until 8 stones arranged in the same boundary pattern carved into the pine tree floated on the surface like pieces of bone. The reflection, whatever wore my shape, stood up inside the water, rising until its shoulders broke the mirror-like surface. But the water didn't break. It simply bulged around the shape like elastic stretching around something trying to emerge. I stumbled back so fast I nearly slid into the ravine. The presence matched me, staying just a breath behind. The figure in the pool tilted its head, the smile widened. Then it raised its hand, my hand, and curled its fingers inward. A gesture, a beckon, a command. Come closer. Behind me, the presence leaned in too, pressure building against my back, hurting me forward, guiding me toward the pool like I wasn't prey but a participant in something older than the forest. My legs trembled, my breath turned shallow. Every instinct screamed to run, to scramble up the ravine, to climb, to crawl, to flee in any direction except toward that impossible water. But the thing in the pool didn't move now. It waited, impatient, expectant. And the presence behind me stepped forward again, close enough now that I felt it breathe. The breath against my neck wasn't warm or cold. It was something in between, something unnervingly neutral. Human breath has temperature, humidity, rhythm. This one didn't. It was like standing in the wake of something that didn't need lungs to imitate the idea of breathing. My knees buckled. I crouched instinctively, bracing myself, palms pressing into the strange soil. A tremor pulsed through it, subtle, steady, almost like a second heartbeat beneath the earth. It synchronized with the pool's drawn-out inhale. The reflection, my not reflection, watched from the water's surface, still half-formed, its smile a fixed crescent carved into a too-still face. The longer I stared, the more its features rearranged themselves into a version of me I would never willingly claim. Eyes too dark, jaw too sharp, posture too deliberate. It raised its other hand, slowly, gently, and pointed at the ground beside the pool. I followed the gesture. There, partially buried in the dark soil, lay another object. Not gear, not clothing. A boot. Brown leather, mud-caked, collapsed inward at the ankle. The kind you only see in places where someone walked in but didn't walk out. My breath caught. The presence behind me stiffened, tensing, anticipating. I reached for the boot with trembling fingertips. The soil around it shifted, crumbling away to reveal more beneath. Not bones. Not an entire body. Something worse. Tracks. Human tracks. Bare footprints. Pressed deep into the earth, leading out of the pool. Not toward it. Out. As if someone had climbed up from the bottom, like the water was not a surface but a doorway. The presence stepped closer, its weight sinking the soil behind me. Slow, inevitable. A shadow stretched across the basin floor, long and tall and horribly wrong. I couldn't turn. I couldn't look back. The notebook's warning pounded in my skull. Don't look back. The air thickened until it felt like breathing through a soaked cloth. My ears rang. The pool's mirror surface vibrated. The stones arranged on top pulsed with each contraction of whatever stirred beneath. The reflection tilted its head again, this time mimicking the angle I made when I was confused or scared or trying to solve something I didn't understand. It knew me. It knew my face, my habits, my posture, and now it mimicked the smallest parts of me like it had been studying from behind the trees long before I ever reached the basin. My throat dried. I whispered without meaning to, "What do you want?" The reflection answered with movement. It placed its hand, my hand, flat against the underside of the water's surface. The liquid stretched under its palm like taut skin, bowing outward but never breaking. Then it pushed. The bulge swelled toward me, pressing inches above the surface. It's like something trying to emerge through a membrane. The water strained, warping, distorting the reflection's face until it no longer resembled me at all. A crack sounded behind me, wood snapping under pressure. The presence shifted its weight, not readying to attack, ready to guide. My pulse hammered in my ears. The forest's silence condensed around my skull. I crawled backward through the soil, inching toward the ravine, desperate for distance. But the pool reacted. The water surged upward in a single fluid column, soundless, effortless, forming a spine of liquid that twisted toward me. Inside it, faces flickered. Not fully human, not fully anything. Expressions stretching and collapsing like memories smeared across glass. The reflection reached a hand toward me from within the rising column. Not for violence, not for comfort, for claim. A deep vibration shook the basin, lifting dust from the ground. The ravine behind me narrowed, the trees leaning inward, closing like ribs around a lung. The presence behind me pressed closer, forcing me forward another inch. My teeth chattered from the pressure of holding myself in place. I finally thought to shout, "Stop, stay away!" My voice came out small, fragile, no echo. But the water listened. The rising column froze midair. The reflection paused, hands suspended. The basin went impossibly still. Then the water lowered itself, slow, cautious, retreating into the pool with an obedient shiver. The reflection sank with it, dissolving like ink in water, leaving only my own face behind again, faint, pale, trembling. Except this reflection didn't smile. This one looked terrified, just like me. The presence behind me shifted once more, closer than it had ever been, so close that the soil beneath us moved in two different rhythms, mine and its. My breath hitched. Then it spoke, a whisper, not in words, in direction, forward, and with that one soundless instruction, it stepped aside, just far enough for me to move, just far enough for me to choose, stay with the pool or run. And for the first time, I realized something suffocatingly clear. It had never been chasing me. It had been hurting me. The instant the presence stepped aside, the air changed. The pressure wrapped around my ribs released, not enough to let me breathe normally, but enough to let me move, enough to make the choice it demanded feel like mine, even though every part of me knew it wasn't. Forward. The directive still pulsed in my skull, even though it had never spoken in a language I recognized. It was like a compass needle buried somewhere behind my eyes, all of its force pointing toward the far end of the basin where the ravine continued into the ridge. My legs trembled when I tried to stand, soil sliding beneath my boots. The pool behind me remained unnervingly quiet. My reflection, my true one, stared back from the surface, distorted and frightened but unmoving. No false smile, no imitation. Just me, pale and small under the motionless water. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. I reached full height, breath shuddering out of me, and the presence shifted behind me as though mirroring the motion. Not close enough to touch me, just close enough to make sure I didn't turn around. I tested that theory. My shoulders twitched in the early motion of a backward glance. The presence thickened like fog tightening into a fist. I froze instantly. The pressure eased. Message received. Forward. My boots broke the surface crust of the soil as I began to walk, each step sinking into the soft, pulse-like ground. Whatever rhythm throbbed beneath me didn't match my stride. It beat slower, deeper, in a primordial cadence that had nothing to do with anything human. Each time my heel hit earth, the basin answered. Not loudly, but unmistakably. The ravine tapered ahead, narrowing into a hallway of roots and exposed rock. My headlamp skimmed across its walls, revealing scratches I hadn't noticed before. Not natural erosion, not animal. Symbols, 5 straight slashes, then a broken V-shape, then a ring bisected by a jagged line. They repeated like a pattern. I passed the first set, nothing happened. I passed the second. The air thickened. By the time I reached the third repetition, the pulse under the soil changed, syncing with the symbols in a way that made my stomach twist. It felt like stepping into a mouth that had been waiting to close. A gust of cold air drifted through the ravine, carrying a faint, mossy scent that didn't belong in a place this dry. The wind sounded almost wet, like it had passed over something alive. The presence followed just behind my heels, not touching, never touching. But its weight moved when mine did, as if we were tethered by invisible thread. I didn't dare speed up. I didn't dare slow down. The ravine twisted left, then right, shadows bending in a way my brain didn't immediately parse. I kept moving, hand grazing the rough stone for balance, even though every instinct screamed not to touch anything. I finally reached a natural choke point where the walls pressed together so tightly that I had to turn sideways to slip through. My backpack scraped rock, fabric grinding between stone edges. A sound behind me, soft, deliberate, made my skin crawl. The presence squeezed through the gap after me. But the sound it made wasn't scraping stone. It was tapping. Rhythmic. Click, 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 click. Like fingernails on glass. I almost stopped. My breath hitched. The clicking repeated, slow, methodical, like something counting the seconds between my steps. I pushed forward faster. The ravine opened abruptly into another clearing, and when my headlamp stretched across the new space, my heart slammed into my throat. Another pool, smaller, shallower, perfectly round, but this one wasn't still. This one boiled. Not with heat, there was no steam, no warmth, but with motion. Objects floated just beneath the surface, rotating in lazy circles. I stepped closer, drawn despite myself. Not rocks, not debris. Photographs. Dozens, maybe hundreds, waterlogged and colorless, drifting like drowned memories. Faces warped in the distortion, people captured mid-laugh, mid-living, every one of them smudged, fading, dissolving around the edges. My headlamp caught one drifting near the surface. A man in hiking gear, smiling at the camera, standing in front of the Whitewater Ridge sign. His eyes were identical to the ones I'd seen on the man in the only usable photo from the missing persons diagram taped to the trailhead map hours earlier. Ben Reyes. The canyon swallowed my breath. The moment I recognized the face, the boiling stopped. The photos stilled. The water flattened. The air grew painfully quiet. Then the circle of water constricted. Just slightly, just enough to make ripples slide outward. Something moved beneath the photographs, slow, heavy, serpentine. The presence behind me stepped closer, not threateningly, not protectively, but almost like it was drawing nearer to witness something it had seen 100 times before. Something rose beneath the water, not breaking the surface, just lifting the photos from below. A second face appeared between the drifting images, not a photo, a reflection, mine, but older, weathered, different. Its hair was longer, streaked with gray. Its jaw was gaunter. There was dirt smudged beneath its eyes. My reflection stared back at me with an expression I'd never worn in my life. Recognition. Not of me, of itself. It lifted a hand toward the underside of the surface. Not beckoning, not threatening, pressing, as if trying to tell me something through the water's thin membrane. I stumbled backward. My boot splashed into a shallow puddle I hadn't seen. The sound shattered the stillness like a snapped bone. The presence behind me stiffened. The reflection's eyes widened. The water inhaled. The photographs dipped, wavered, then shot downward as if sucked into a drain. The entire pool convulsed inward, collapsing into itself. I stumbled again, catching my balance against the wall as the water shrank, contracting into a swirling vortex that exposed dark, glistening stone underneath. A low, resonant groan rumbled from deep in the earth. So deep it felt like it moved through my teeth more than my ears. The reflection distorted as the water spiraled by, stretching its features into a twisted mockery of mine until its face was unrecognizable. I turned to run, but the presence stepped in front of me, finally blocking my path. The first time it had ever barred my escape. And for the first time, it wasn't hurting me somewhere. It was keeping me from leaving. The ravine behind me sealed with soundless darkness as the last of the pool's water drained into a widening crack in the earth. Beneath the retreating water, beneath the stone, something glimmered faintly. Metal, a small rectangular object lodged in a crevice, a field recorder, its red light blinking weakly. My breath died in my throat. I knew exactly who it belonged to. Ben Reyes, and the presence behind me stepped closer, as if highly interested in what I was about to hear. The recorder's blinking red light pulsed in the hollow beneath the drained pool, its glow rhythmic, weak, but unmistakably deliberate, like the heartbeat of something that had been waiting to be found. The last of the water slithered down the fissure with a wet, retreating hiss, leaving the recorder exposed among the stone ribs of the basin floor. Ben Reyes. This was his. My breath came out shaky as I crouched. The presence behind me leaned in closer, its attention pinned to the device, its weight pressing the air down like a storm cloud preparing to lower itself onto the earth. The recorder's red light blinked once, twice, then faster. I reached out. My fingers touched cold metal. The presence inhaled. I hit the playback button. A rush of static burst through the clearing. Then a voice, broken, shaky, full of fear that had soaked itself into every syllable. Ben, if someone finds this, you're close. Too close. A scraping sound like rocks dragged across the ground. Don't trust the reflections. They watch, they copy. And when they're done copying, a wet thump, a strangled cry. It knows I'm leaving this. It wants me to. Silence. Then a new sound, deeper. A slow, resonant rumble like something alive shifting beneath stone. The same pulse I'd felt under my boots since entering the basin. Ben's breathing returned, ragged and wet. It herds you, makes you think you're choosing. You're not. The presence behind me tensed like a drawn bowstring. It doesn't kill you. It replays you. Static swallowed the rest. The recorder blinked 3 more times, then died completely. The clearing fell into a silence so complete I could hear my pulse ticking against my eardrums. My hands trembled as I lowered the recorder. The presence behind me hovered, still, expectant, watching me decide whether to accept what I'd just heard. Replays you. My reflection in the first pool, the older version of me in the second, the photos, the symbols, the impossible movement of water and earth, and every missing person who walked this ridge. They weren't killed, they weren't taken. They were replayed, like the forest didn't understand death, only duplication. A soft vibration rose under the basin floor. The cracked earth widened around the recorder, spreading like the seam of an opening jaw. No, not opening. Inviting. The presence moved. For the first time, it circled me. Slow, careful, like a sheepdog completing its final sweep before returning its flock to the gate. When it completed the circle, it stopped directly behind me. Close. Too close. The air pressed at my spine, not a push, a nudge. Downward, toward the widening fissure. I staggered back, heart hammering, breath scraping my throat. The crack yawned larger, revealing slick stone leading into a cavernous throat of darkness. The pulse beneath the earth intensified, like something below recognized me, like the ridge was exhaling in anticipation. I tried to step away, the presence closed in behind me, towering, immovable. I whispered, whether to myself or to Ben or to whatever listened beneath the soil, I didn't know. I'm not going down there. The presence pressed harder, not violent, not angry, insistent. A parent guiding a child into a school they didn't want to attend, a ritual repeated. A cycle understood only by those who survived long enough to recognize it. Behind me, something shifted, branches cracking in slow motion, air bending around a shape too large to comprehend. My peripheral vision blurred with tears. No more running. I lunged sideways into the ravine, scraping my shoulder on stone. The presence lunged too, but too late. My boots found rough footing, and I propelled myself forward into the narrow corridor where it couldn't fully follow. It slammed into the stone behind me. The entire canyon shook. The pulse stuttered. I ran. The ravine's twists blurred. My headlamp bounced light across symbols and roots and walls that seemed to move with me, redirecting me back toward the basin, toward the fissure, toward where it wanted me. But I kept running. The presence roared, not with sound, but with pressure. A tidal wave of invisible force slammed into the walls, cracking stone and raining dust as I squeezed through the choke point. The world compressed into a narrow ribbon of survival. Then, a glint of silver, metal, camp gear, my own boot prints. The first clearing, my campsite, my tent unzipped, my pack opened, my footprints, fresh. I crashed into the clearing. My legs buckled and I collapsed against a fallen log, gasping. The forest around me held its breath. The presence didn't follow, not past the tree line, not into the world where sunlight touched the soil. It stopped at the basin's invisible border, waiting, watching. Its silhouette, tall, wrong, ancient, stayed half hidden behind the trunks, not retreating, not dissolving, observing, like someone watching a movie pause at a crucial frame. I grabbed my pack, shoulder muscles screaming, and staggered to my truck at the edge of the ridge. The keys shook in my hand. The engine caught after the second turn. The forest's weight eased, but as I reversed, my headlights swept across the trees, and for the briefest moment, my own face stared back at me from between the trunks. Older, hollow-eyed, waiting. The same expression I'd seen under the water, the same one Ben had warned me about. A reflection that wasn't a reflection, a replay. I floored the accelerator. The truck shot back down the fire road, gravel skidding under the tires. The ridge collapsed behind me into a dark, throbbing silhouette. Only when I reached the highway did I finally breathe. And even then, as the sun rose behind the mountains, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror and felt a jolt of cold dread. For a moment, just a moment, it smiled. And I didn't.